We'll get back to normal one of these days. It won't be today and it won't be all at once. And normal won't be the same as it was before the pandemic. Still, Chris Kiley, Associate Director of Texans for the Arts, is looking forward to the day when we'll all be together again, physically and artistically. Welcome to BexarCast. I'm Randy Langford, and this is BexarCast, a weekly interview with business, political, education, and nonprofit leaders. We're examining the relationships between all four and how each one benefits from the success of the other three. Chris Kiley wasn't born in Texas, but he got here as soon as he could. He considers the Lone Star State one of the best places on earth and loves working on behalf of the people in his new home state. When he's not advocating for Texas art and artists, he loves spending time with his partner Amanda and their large, goofy dog, Gatsby. Chris, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you making some time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to see you. Let me start with a little background about Texans for the Arts. It's a nonpartisan, statewide arts advocacy organization dedicated to protecting and increasing both public and private funding for the arts at a lot of levels, state, national, and even local, like what I'm doing. It also provides coordinated information about legislative activity related to the arts. And there's a lot of that going on right now. As associate director of that organization, what's your role? What do you do?
So the most important thing that I do at Texans for the Arts is that I manage a lot of our membership and communication strategy. So we're a membership-based organization. So we are solely funded by people who believe in our work and who become members of Texans for the Arts. And we represent them, again, at all three of those levels. So I manage our social media platforms. We are very active. We have a YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a great team of 4 interns that I manage over the course of the fall, and hopefully we'll have more in the spring. I also spend a lot of time meeting and educating lawmakers. During session is when we get obviously our busiest, but our job is to go in there and we have a legislative agenda that's adopted by our board and by our membership, and then we go out there and we work to help lawmakers understand the importance of the arts and the different resource streams that we're trying to protect and promote. We go in and we talk to them about how that can be applied to the statewide budget. The other thing I also do is managing our grassroots base. So we also send out newsletters very timely as needed. Sometimes they come out every other week, sometimes they're once a week. It depends on what's going on. Obviously, over the past several months, things have been very busy. So I help manage a lot of those communications as well.
Okay. You referenced the pandemic, and that's kind of the obvious topic that everybody's talking about right now. And it's putting a devastating economic strain on almost every segment of society, including the arts.
Absolutely.
Venues are closed, performances are canceled, entire programs are in jeopardy. And it's easy to lose sight of the economic impact of the arts when there's so much going on. But there is an economic element to all the things we've been talking about. Can we put a little framework around that? How many Texans are in art-related jobs?
So it's tricky because I like to think of things. Yes, art-related is one thing, but innovation workers are the way that I like to think about what we do. Creativity goes far beyond, not to belittle at all. Myself have a background in theater. Not to belittle the actual arts themselves, but the skill sets that the arts beget create what I like to call innovation jobs. And in Texas, we have nearly 800,000 innovation jobs. We represent 1 in 15 of the Texas workforce is somebody who works in what I would call a creative industry. And, particularly with BexarFest, it's very, this is a great segue. You guys do a lot of digital media production and video production for nonprofits. Well, that's just as much of an arts-related job as anyone who's actually on a stage or making music.
Right.
The skill set is creative and therefore very important. So imagine that 1 in 15 people in Texas are working in some sort of innovation-related workspace.
Wow, that's a huge economic impact.
Absolutely. I mean, the creative industries generate $5.95 billion just in sales state tax every year. It's a huge boon to the state coffers, and it's just a testament to how much economic activity the arts generate in the state.
Right, right. Well, and economics aside, there's also obviously the cultural value of the arts. And I see it on the news that there are reports of increased anxiety and people aren't sleeping well and they're irritable and restless. And does that relate back to venues being closed and performances not happening? How big a part does the lack of access to the arts right now play in that anxiety issue?
I think it is pretty serious. The situation itself, obviously, the pandemic has created a lot of isolation, and isolation can be, for some, a good thing, but for most people, it's not a good thing. And the arts, in and of themselves, their function is to bring people together, to give us a sense of community, to give us a sense of place, to help us learn about one another, because we're a very diverse population in the States. And these are the spaces where we can come together to have those exchange of ideas. And if nothing else, then to just be with somebody. I think that the pandemic has proven that it is very important for people to do that. And no doubt it is proven difficult for us to do that because of the social distancing, one, but also because of the reopening regulations. The arts community and arts producing organizations have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, because though we're seeing the reopening process begin and the economy begin to come back on track for some, the vast majority of arts organizations have been left out. And because of the risks posed by the pandemic, it makes sense. You can't pack a theater full of people to come together right now. But no doubt, it is an important element of society coming together. Having a sense of place or a sense of community is paramount. It's also, in my experience, working with many communities across the state, the arts are sort of how we define ourselves. Me being from Austin and y'all being in Bexar County, we are all Texans, but we have very different sort of cultural and societal norms that we live by that are a little bit different. And the arts are really what help us define ourselves amongst our peers and amongst our community members.
Right. That shared experience and that shared humanity, I guess, is the word I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of people, and you mentioned it, a lot of people look at BexarFest as an arts event because the students are involved in making videos and creating graphics and taking photos and composing music. And that's true. There is an artistic element to it. It's certainly artistic, but there's a strong educational element to it as well. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of arts in education?
Absolutely. So this is a little bit of what I call my bread and butter, because I have spent a lot of time in the world of arts and education. I spent several years working, when not with Texans for the Arts, but with an organization in Austin called Creative Action as what's called an arts integration specialist. And I spent time working with classroom teachers to develop arts-based curriculum that intersects with non-traditional arts-friendly subjects. So my bread and butter was fifth grade science. And then I did English language arts all across an elementary school, at a school called Campbell Elementary here in Austin. And so I would work with the teachers. We would develop a curriculum where they would need to learn something from the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the TEKS, which obviously are very important here in the state. And we would use arts as a medium to get them to understand those concepts. And so I think the arts are paramount to doing that. Now, we can talk all day about my work as an arts integration specialist, but I like to also go back to the fact that arts for art's sake, so to speak, is also incredibly valuable. The skill sets that the arts provide our young people prepare them uniquely for the 21st century workforce. Creative problem solving, facing a challenge and overcoming it, having a shared goal in a group and achieving those goals. Language skills, public speaking skills. These are all skills that are not traditionally taught in some of those other STEM areas that become incredibly important for the 21st century workplace. In fact, in my experience, when I speak with different people in the business community, and there's also been articles, I think, that have talked a little bit about this, the business community today is really looking for people that have a background in the creative arts because they possess those unique skills. It is very hard to teach somebody how to be comfortable in front of a group. It is very hard to teach somebody how to be a good listener or to have some empathy around solving a problem that they maybe have never seen before. And seeing something and looking at something from a creative lens is paramount to the new age of technology we live in and the new problems that we face. And I am a huge proponent for the fact that the arts are uniquely positioned to help our students be ready to do just that.
Right. One of the elements of BearFest is when the students build their production team, we put them in front of a client. They're paired with a nonprofit organization, and that is essentially their client. Mm-hmm. So they're having these client meetings at 16, 17 years old, and they're going through that awkward growth period where you're a little nervous about what you're saying and a little scared of what they're going to say. And I absolutely agree that it's better to learn that at 17 than 27.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the impacts of the pandemic is homeschooling. Everybody's going through that. And I know a lot of arts and music teachers are modifying their lessons to make them more online friendly, I guess is the phrase. Do you have any data on how arts education is being impacted specifically by the pandemic, specifically arts education?
I think it's a little early to tell right now because we're still just in the process of coming back into a school year after the summer away during the midst of this. From what I do hear, and this is more of a personal and an anecdotal take on it, a lot of my friends are still working in the arts. They're still teaching those classes, but it is going to be challenging. So as kids go back to school, what we're seeing is they need to maintain social distancing. And they oftentimes are spending a significant amount of time in one learning space versus oftentimes the arts involve moving to different learning spaces around a school. And they're not going to be able to do that for the foreseeable future. So there is no doubt that there is a challenge being created for arts teachers. But I do think that some of the innovative teaching practices that are going to come out of the pandemic, and this spans beyond just arts teachers, but some of these innovative practices will be helpful in the future. But right now, it is challenging. But I don't have any specific data for you today about how many electives are being canceled or things like that. But just the notion that kids are having to be more separated, it is very difficult to have a dance class or a theater class or even an art class where you're all sharing materials and coming together. That is going to be something that we will have to kind of work through in the coming months, but I am hopeful that this is temporary and that we will come out the other side of this.
Yeah, this too shall pass.
Yes, sir.
We're pretty realistic about the kids who participate in BearFest. We know most of them are not going to go into the media field. This is part of being in high school. You try different things, and some of it resonates, some of it doesn't. So we know that most of the kids who participate in BearFest is going to be one and done. But what about students who are planning career in the arts? We talked a little bit about the shutdown that's going on. The venues are closed, programs are being canceled, performances are being canceled. What's this going to do to the career path for kids who do want a career in the arts? Is it going to make it tougher to get into the industry, or is it going to make fewer opportunities? What's the upshot?
You know, that's a tough question to answer, but I think that what we're going to find is that the arts are incredibly resilient. They've always been incredibly resilient because they're so important. And I think that for anybody considering a career in the arts, if that is your passion, I've been one to always tell my students that you should be living your passion. You should be doing the things that make you happy. What I do think is that the pandemic maybe has laid bare the importance of understanding that these are skill sets, that if you want a career in the arts, it may not look exactly the way you envisioned it at first. But if you look at the problem creatively using those skill sets that you acquire in school, you'll find a way to be involved in the arts and have a fulfilling career. When I first got into my undergraduate work and my undergraduate studies, I sort of had an idea of what my career might look like. But then I found that I had these other things that were really important to me: community activism, working in the political sphere, creating change, and helping my community through action and advocacy work. And then I happened to, in graduate school, meet my current boss, who actually inspired me to understand that I can use my creative skill set and all of the things that make me happy about being an artist, I can apply in this different way that's still incredibly fulfilling, and it's still very much a career in the arts.
Right.
So I think it's important that we understand that there are lots of different ways it can look, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be pursuing what you love, because there's always going to be a place somewhere for those skills.
Right. You're probably the only guy that ever went into college on one trajectory and came out on another. I've had teachers tell me, speaking of education, I've had teachers tell me that they've had students go into BexarFest as shy, quiet kids that I'm better behind the scenes. Don't put me in front of the camera. That's not where I'm comfortable. And as they go through the process of that awkward meeting clients and defending your thesis and that sort of thing, that they've become more confident, more outgoing. They come out of that shell. Is participating in the arts a catalyst for that? Is that common?
The short answer is yes, absolutely. I think you actually just captured the very importance of why we have arts in our education system, because for those kids to go into a program like BexarFest and to be challenged to take a risk to be in front of somebody, knowing that it's a safe place, knowing that someone's going to have their back and you're going to work through this with them, those skill sets of being able to take that risk, face that risk, and see that they can accomplish their goal is in and of itself one of the most important skills they can take away. Because when you go into the workforce, those are exactly the things that your employers are going to be requiring of you. And there's really no other way to learn that than to be put in those positions to take those risks. You have to come up with a creative product that you're then going to share. I mean, this is exactly how the economy today works. So I think you said it probably even better than I did about how important this work can be for the development of a 21st century workforce and of these young people.
Right. And you raise another interesting point, is knowing that somebody has your back, that you're not as isolated as you might think you are. The premier event that we have at the Tobin Center in February is the big finish to the festival. We bring everybody together. The kids get to see their video on a giant screen with an audience of 1,000 people. It's a big celebration. It's quite an event. And one of the reasons we do that is so students can see there are other schools and other kids just as passionate about storytelling and creating and expressing themselves as they are. How important is that for students who may think they're the only ones who have that artistic desire? How important is that to know that there is a community of people like me that I don't have to feel like I'm so weird?
I think it's incredibly important. I'm not sure there's much of anything that's more important to a student's success than if they come together with other students who have a shared interest. To feel a part of something that is bigger than you is incredibly valuable. I think, participation in programs like this, it does offer community, but that community can not only help the individual student and like sort of the body come together, it can also drastically improve some nuts and bolts things about that student's life. We know that at-risk students who participate in programs like BexarFest and arts programs are significantly less likely to drop out of school. We know that students who participate in arts programs typically test about 15% higher on their standardized tests. And all this information comes from the Texas Cultural Trust, who does extensive research on arts and education. So yes, it builds community, but it also has a real effect on the academic success of that student as they move forward. So they come together, and then that spreads. The more that one student is getting that sort of experience, the more that they come together and have that experience together, the overall better quality of education becomes for the students.
That's very encouraging. That's very heartening. But let's take it to the next level. Let's take it to the parents. Okay. That my son or daughter has this idea that they want to be an artist, and I'm just not supportive. I just don't think they can make a living that way. how important is it to reinforce to parents that, look, there is a community here. Your child's not jumping off a cliff. There is an opportunity that they could express themselves and be successful at the same time.
Sure. I think that that's a real sort of fundamental issue that we as an arts community and as arts educators need to face. We need parents to understand that just because a student wants to go into a career in the arts, that there's this sort of idea that perhaps that is more of a hobby than a very valuable skill set for them.
Right.
And that's why education for both students and parents is so critical, that the skills that you are learning through the practice of the arts, they may lead you down a career path that doesn't look exactly like this starving artist syndrome that a parent might think that their kids are going through, or that their kids are bound to engage in. I know many people who have a background in the arts who end up perhaps taking a different path, but being extraordinarily successful. But I also have a lot of friends who decided that they wanted to go down that path and be an artist, and who today are very successful, very happy working artists. So there's this notion that like it has to be all one or all the other. And I think that that's the beauty of the arts, is that it provides you with all of these skill sets that are so translatable that you might get to be an artist one day, and then you're being a creative consultant as an art director the next day, which is something completely different. These skill sets are so translatable and so malleable, and frankly so valuable to the business world today that I just, it's an argument I have a hard time understanding, because I just have been I have been able to be so successful myself by being a member of the arts community and doing those things. So I hope that parents understand, or I would hope that I could help parents to understand that the arts play a pivotal role, not just as something for our kids to do while they're at school or after school, but they really do create opportunities. They really do help us build lasting relationships, and they really do prepare us in a very unique way for some of the challenges that our kids face in the workforce today.
If you're good at collaboration, if you learn critical thinking skills, that's going to apply to any career. So the time you're spending in an artistic endeavor is never wasted. Don't think it's just, oh, that's something to do until you get a real job.
That's absolutely it,
Yeah.
because that time spent building that skill could be invaluable to their future for those students.
Right. Like a lot of people right now, I'm concerned about how long it's going to take the economy as a whole to rebound, and that includes the artistic portion of the economy. From your perspective, what's the future of the arts in Texas, and what can I do to help?
Well, the future of the arts is always going to be good, because if you look back in history, what are the things that we remember from civilizations that have long since passed? We have their art, we have their literature, we have, since the written word, we have their poetry, but we have their sculptures and their paintings. And the arts are always going to be the way that we connect with our own sense of humanity. They're always going to be the way that we connect with our communities, and they're always going to be the things that we will leave behind. I have no doubt that the arts will rebound from this. Economically speaking, it's really hard to say. I think that really depends on the timeline with a vaccine, and it really it depends on all sorts of things that are, we have an election coming up on November 3rd that could have an impact. But the future looks bright, and I think that it will come back stronger than ever. And I think that some of the good things that maybe we'll look back on as far as the arts are that what this pandemic has challenged the arts community to do is to be as creative as ever. We have to be innovative with how we make and produce art, with how we share art. And those are things that even when we go back to whatever sense of normalcy looks like a year or two from now, but those are going to be lessons learned and tools in our toolkit. And if there's one thing I know about artists, we are always like sponges. We are absorbing, we are innovating. I mean, that is the function of what we do. We are creative. And I think that those are the things that I look forward to seeing come through this. rather than thinking about the struggles we're in now. I try to look at the best I can day by day, look at it as an opportunity to make a brighter future for the arts sector.
You have an artist's heart.
I do.
Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate the work you do and the constituents you represent. I thank you.
Absolutely. And just one last thing before I go, Randy. Texans for the Arts, of course, is a membership organization. Individuals, we have a $25 entry level for individuals. If a student wants to become involved in that way, or a parent wants to become involved in that way. But I would also say, I would love to encourage students, if they're listening, to be involved in the state legislative session. That starts in January. So what I have found in my time is meeting with lawmakers. The most important thing you can do is share your story. And if the arts are important to you, there is nothing stopping you, no matter how old you are, there is nothing stopping you from being a part of that system, being a part of that conversation. We bring students with us often to speak with legislators about how the arts matter to them, because there are public funds. The program that I worked with, the Arts Integration Program, was publicly funded by the state in piece through a grant from the Texas Commission on the Arts to do those programs. So if you have an art program that is changing your life, don't be afraid to look up your legislator. If you need help, ask your parents, or contact us at Texans for the Arts. We would love to help you. Be in contact with your lawmaker. Tell your story, because it makes a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how you can help.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Awesome, Randy. Thank you so much for having me today.
My
we really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Take care.